It's February the 26th, 2014. This is 508, a show about Worcester. I am Michael Benedetti. Also on the show today,
Brendan Melican.
Hi, How
Brendan.
are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Brendan, we're here parked behind the Crompton Collective Artisan and Antique Mall, and the other Artisan and Antique Malls over here.
Green Street?
Harrison Street.
Harrison Street in front of us. 9 Harrison Street in front of us. The other side of this, on Harrison Street itself, is the Salsa Storm Salsa Studio.
That's correct.
What's going in 9 Harrison Street
Weed.
this year? How much weed?
A whole bunch of weed.
This is where
A whole bunch of weed is going in.
People say, I hear that there's going to be a medical marijuana dispensary in Worcester.
This is correct.
And the plan is that it would come into Worcester December.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they told the paper. Company called Good Chemistry.
Yeah, out of Colorado.
Very
reputable company from Colorado, from what I can tell.
They're going to be coming into this building in December and having a medical marijuana store.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
This is going to be their retail operation.
And,
I don't know. People feel like
And then
people
the entire city is just going to collapse under its own weight, as Billy Bro has been promising us for years.
Well, he went
Fire and brimstone.
He went from the city council this week in a last-ditch effort to ask for the city to do its own independent investigation of the application that these guys put in with the state.
In all fairness, he actually did have a pretty valid point. They had some problems with their application in Boston. They also got they won a license for a Boston dispensary, and it's not entirely clear if it's a lot of local politicians who are getting some flack in Boston about the siting, who are trying to walk back their support of the license, or if when the license was submitted, they just copy and pasted some of the text that they used for the Worcester application. But there do seem to be some problems in the language that was used in the Boston application. And what Billy's asking seems to be pretty straightforward, that let's just make sure that
we're not doing the same, that we don't have the same confusion.
Well, because under the whole it's a state license process, right? I mean, everything is under penalty of perjury, right? I mean, you don't want to get off on the wrong foot when it comes to something as new and important as medical marijuana.
Yes, although I sort of feel like I doubt his.
Billy, I love you,
but I'm skeptical of his motives here.
His motives are probably not to ensure that this is the most profitable and successful operation in the industry.
Yeah.
We can only hope, though.
Hopefully he'll be the first customer.
Oh, he will.
Come December, whatever day they open up.
So we're back.
Here we are. Anyways, if you're wondering where that place is, that's kind of exciting. There's already head shops. There's a head shop downtown.
There's a couple. Yeah.
There's one around the corner here on
Green Street.
Yeah, it's kind of neat too, because I remember as a a kid, but as a teenager, mid '90s, we had a couple head shops pop up in the city, and they were raided rather quickly, and it was like big Vice Squad raids, and it was nothing more than the same sort of paraphernalia thing. But at the time, the arguments were being made a lot harder that they were violating the law that this can only be for tobacco use and whatnot, and if you make it at all obvious that you're selling this merchandise for illicit uses or uses with illicit controlled substances, then you're subject to penalty. And we had raids of head shops, but now they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
The world is changing, and it's.
I'm excited to see if this is going to be any noticeable difference. I mean, there's already plenty of people walking around the city stoned by marijuana or just by their own.
I can totally get why I think there's like a line too. It's probably around 40 or so and above, and I don't mean to offend anyone that watches the show that's older and doesn't fit into that demographic, but I can totally understand why people who have been completely hammered by anti-drug propaganda, and at this point, especially where weed is concerned, I think you can only call it propaganda, as they were younger, would be nervous and hesitant to watch this move forward. But to your point, I mean, I think if anyone actually believes that the wheels are going to fall off the bus by introducing retail weed, I mean, everybody around you is smoking weed. They just don't talk about it because they don't want to go to jail. But chances are good, even if you're hanging out with cops and lawyers and doctors and firefighters and politicians, they probably smoke a little bit of weed. And so far, the wheels have not fallen off the bus.
I can understand the resistance to this kind of thing. Like, I don't think that I think that, as far as the balance goes, we should just have legalized weed. But like, I've never known anybody who was more fun when they were stoned.
No?
Not in my opinion. I mean, and I've never been stoned, so maybe if I am stoned, then it's better. But as far as I know a lot of people who, like, there's definitely people who I know
Yeah.
who are more fun when they're drunk, less fun when they're drunk.
That's the comparison I was going to make. Like, nobody finds drunks fun when you're sober, right?
Oh, there's
I mean,
some people who I know who are great fun when
at
they're
a
drunk.
distance, like when you can point and laugh, sort of thing, and you know that you're safe. But I mean, I think when you also take the edge off of yourself. But more than anything, though, for what we're doing here is still the medical side of things, and I think it's really important that, again, this is not going to be a public thing. This isn't going to be, we're not opening up Christiana here. Like, we're going to.
This isn't going to be a Amsterdam type situation.
No, you're going to have people who are sick smoking weed in their house, in theory.
Now let me ask you, because I know you follow all of this kind of stuff very closely. In other places around the country where medical marijuana has come in,
Mm-hmm.
has it stayed like, majority like medical stuff, or is it like, ha ha ha, you got a splinter, here's a prescription, buy some weed?
It's interesting that I think that's a debate that's kind of gone on across the board, and you still have major medical marijuana dispensaries. Harborside is the big one, who I don't think who put in an application in Massachusetts and didn't get one in California, and they are near religious. They're fundamentalist when it comes to their insistence that it should only be medical.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably an argument to be made that they don't want it to go full decriminalization or legalization, because then they lose control of now their little protected
Right.
corner of the market.
Right.
But if you listen to their spiels, they're really, really big on the idea that, yeah, it's a controlled marketplace. And I think one of the things that you could probably make an argument that this is where a lot of traditional Western medicine has a point to be made, is that it's not as simple with marijuana as saying, like, here's the pill that you're taking for anxiety, or whatever the case may
Right.
be, right? Like, you've got this thing that's introduced into the marketplace that's essentially a cure-all. And that's, I think, a difficult thing for people to wrap their heads around, right? But it's also important to recognize that there are thousands of strains of marijuana, right? And there's a good argument to be made with all of those compounds that are involved there, that there are different strains that have different effects on different people for different maladies.
Right, because it's not just like saying, like, okay, these 50 milligram pills of Prozac, because that's how things like Prozac are handled, right? Like, the FDA will be like, you can sell this particular formulation of a
Right.
50 milligram or whatever it is, a Prozac pill.
Yeah.
And then there's also this, now you can have a 75 milligram pill
Yeah.
with this formulation approved. But this is just basically being like, here you have some stuff that has some combination of
Yep.
hundreds of chemicals. I don't know how many of them are active.
Well, and that's the thing too, is on the medical side, the big one now that you see the biggest growth in are strains that are heavy in or only contain CBDs, which are the cannabinoids that don't get you high, right? So I mean, like, now you've got an entire this huge share of the market that is really potent weed that doesn't get you high at all, but they're finding that it seems to help people with, say, seizures and a lot of more serious ailments that. And again, I mean, there could be a lot of placebo effect stuff there too, because there's still a lot of difficulty in terms of actual research in the medical world and what have you. On a long enough timeline, all this stuff intersects. It'll be fleshed out, and at the end of the day, the most important thing I think for people to keep in mind is that no state, we've got California going back to the 90s, has seen any lift in crime or unemployment or whatever the case. All the things that people say are going to go wrong with society if you introduce weed, they just haven't happened. And like, California is probably the best example of where nothing changed.
More Bob Marley posters, maybe.
A couple more Bob Marley posters, but even that, it doesn't seem to have changed.
There's always been a lot of Bob Marley posters.
In California, in Southern California especially, but we haven't seen nationally or in California any significant lift in the number of people smoking marijuana as a result of legalization. We just see more people less fearful about being closeted with their vice of choice because they're not going to go to prison for it.
Yeah. Yeah, to a certain extent, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens to that as it goes forward. Like, it makes, as somebody who's never smoked anything, I'm certainly, like, the legality or illegality of it has never had any impact on that decision.
Yeah.
So I can sort of understand that, like, yeah, if you're really dedicated to smoking, it's not that such a big deal. You might as well be doing it.
Yeah, the legal status isn't the thing that's going to stop you, but what's going to be hampered is your willingness to come out and say, hey, this is working for me in one way or another. It either relaxes me at the end of the day better than a glass of whiskey does, or it makes my seizures and back pain go away. Whatever the case may be, it's unfortunate that people feel the necessity to be closeted in that regard.
Well, I'm grateful for all the people who have done all the hard work to get us to where we are, and all the people who have had the guts to not stand in their way.
Yeah.
And all the people who have, like, on the sidelines, like, kept a focus on keeping this process above board and positive. I hope it stays that way. everything I think we're going to talk about this week practically is on the city council agenda. And we talk sometimes about how the city council is, a group of, at worst, a group of LARPing ombudsmen. But the city council meetings are frequently at least the place where the public conversation centers on what's going on in the city, whether or not the decision gets made. So medical marijuana was on the agenda this week. Councilor Lukes asked for an item requesting a report on the ownership and status for the siting of medical marijuana's entities in Worcester and any community outreach and meetings held regarding the siting. Billy Bro had his thing asking that the city should double check these guys' paperwork to make sure that there was no perjury going on with their state application. Another thing people talked about this week at the city council is the process of finding a new permanent city manager. Currently we have a temporary city manager, Ed Augustus, who is a former local politician, and he is going to be the city manager. He said he would just do it for 9 months, and if they said you should do it for longer, he would say no. There has been a lot of back and forth about what's the process going to be to find somebody permanent, because the process to find Ed Augustus was just like, people in the city council were like, hey man, my buddy Ed will do it, and everybody's like, great, and everybody who wasn't really on board with that plan was like, what just happened, what? It looks like the Municipal Operations Committee has approved a plan. We would have a bunch of finalists for city manager selected by the end of May.
Using America's Got Talent rules for selection.
I don't understand what the process is going to be exactly.
There would be time over the summer where community groups and others would be able to meet with the finalists, and that's really good. Like right now, they've been having these listening sessions where people can talk about what they're looking for in a city manager, and a few people have actually told me that they have ideas in the abstract for what they would like. But I do like the idea more of saying, like, here are the whatever finalists, here are the 4 finalists, and you can sort of look at them and say, okay, this guy has this positives, this lady has this positives. Have that conversation for real. I like that idea.
I think it's interesting, though, because it's not entirely... if the idea is just to have a technocrat, right? And I'm not a big fan of the planning form of government to begin with. I think we've talked about my affinity for strong mayor in the past, so whatever. It is what it is. But, if the idea is just to bring in a technocrat, then, shouldn't there be a process that isn't really all about, oh, this guy makes me warm and fuzzy, she, seems to have, the right qualification sort of thing. It should be something that it's self-evident that you have the right person. If it's all about, the purest form of bureaucracy, and I don't know, the whole idea of the listening sessions and whatnot is kind of, it seems like the right thing to do, and I know it's going to make the public really happy, but it's funny, if you pick up the charter, I don't see any mention of, public listening sessions as being any component of selecting a city manager. And I remember when Ed was brought in, that the big complaint was that there was no public input, but there doesn't seem to be any mention of public input in the actual charter process. So I'm not really sure what we're doing and how it actually fits into what the end game is, especially when the big complaint on the outset with Ed was that the process was violated, and now we're kind of just making up a process that. I think it'd be almost nicer if we just sent him a postcard to everyone in the city, and they could fill out name your top 10 things that you want in a city manager, like great hair or whatever the case may
hair
be.
Color? Maybe
hair
a different color.
I don't know,
hair.
but it's going to be interesting to see how
facial hair.
Facial hair is a big one. Yeah, no, that's yeah. I'm sure everyone has their own ideas of what's important in a city manager, but I don't know. Yeah,
I don't want to judge based on facial hair because a lot of women don't have great facial hair, and a woman city manager would be cool too.
Exactly. there's the
or a teenage city manager.
A teenage city manager. We could give everybody in the city an opportunity to do it for 6 months at a time or something like that. We'll just rotate through and see if we find someone that really seems to have a knack for it, we'll let them stick around.
Well, we get something here that involves both
city government machinations and public health, which is an interesting topic. This is changes at the Board of Health, and Brendan will remember this better than me. I read several articles about this, and the more articles I read, the less clear I was on what was going on here. So currently we have a health commissioner.
Yeah.
And currently we have a Board of Health.
I believe so, yeah.
But the Board of Health is an advisory board.
Right.
So this is a board in the sense that a bunch of people if you want to be on the Board of Health and there's a vacancy, you put in an application, and I don't know, the city looks at it, maybe the city council looks at it.
Well, I mean, look, I'm going to butcher this story, but I think the long and the short of it is around the latter half of the last decade, the economy completely tanked,
Right.
and as a result, we had to completely dismantle our public health system in the city because we couldn't afford it anymore. And since that happened, we've had a plan to kind of bring it back into somewhat like it was.
And this is that plan. This
With a
is part of that
structure
plan.
that kind of made sense for the city, but also made sure that people who actually understand science and health, presumably doctors, would be the ones making decisions regarding public health, as opposed to, say, Gary Rosen and Connie Lukes, who I'm sure are always well intentioned when it comes to their public health intentions, but might not actually have the educational background or the knowledge to be making decisions appropriately. So take it out of the hands of politicians and put it into the hands of professionals, which seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. I don't really see much fault with that, but it seems as though last week that one of the politicians involved in making those decisions, Gaffney, new city councilor, didn't want the bureaucracy to take back the public health because they can't be trusted with that sort of important stuff. I don't know, but at the same time, he didn't seem to fully understand the actual proposal in play and acknowledge as much when he withdrew his order, which seemed to kind of dismantle his own argument that we should be entrusting important decisions like that in the hands of politicians because they're better educated about such things, when he admitted to not even really knowing what he was talking about in the first place.
Well,
And that got us to where we are today, which is the plan is still moving forward, it seems.
and
Going
the-
up.
Right. So the plan. So it seems like there's two things going on here. One is to take this board, which is an advisory board, and say you can now become a regulatory board. You
Right.
now will have power. You now can set policy. You now will in some way control what the health department will do. The health department will in some way be more invigorated than in the past.
Well, hopefully it'll be a data-driven board that actually has some ability to make decisions as opposed to just make recommendations to an elected group of people who then will make their decisions based on the typical popularity contest mode of doing business.
and so the other aspect of this change is then also
Also to put in place some sort of health plan that we've developed in the past but haven't really implemented, because Worcester unfortunately is doing somewhat worse than the state average on a lot of different health indicators.
Yeah,
I think the
much.
one on the list of things, asthma was one where we were actually doing better than the rest of this, than the state on average. Everything else we're doing worse. There's more depression, more strokes.
The big one is infant mortality rate. I mean, we have an infant
yeah.
mortality rate that puts us in line with most developing nations, and worse in some cases. And there are things that, as a civilization, we've figured out a long time ago, but for some reason the elected body hasn't been able to deal with these matters in a reasonable way.
Well, I was really happy that as part of Councilor Gaffney's, maybe in retrospect, confused statement as to why he wanted to try to slow this process down and was very skeptical of any of this. He said that this plan, this change in the Board of Health and this change in our health plan would mean, amongst other things, we would get water fluoridation in Worcester, fluoride in the water, precious bodily fluids. Watch out for those. There would be sex education if this happened.
I love this.
It sounded like a bit of fear-mongering to me. I mean, the fluoride was the big red flag, right? Because that's still something that's under state control. I mean, there are guidelines in state law that mandate how you can roll out things like fluoridation plans in public water supply, and it does involve public input. So, yeah, I mean, there's no question that there are things that an administrative or an executive board will have power over that an administrative board wouldn't have power over. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be rolling out these drastic things that and overstepping, say, state or federal law in the process.
And
They're just going to be doing things that are probably considered to be the norm in most advanced civilizations, and we probably should be doing here as well.
And is it correct to say that currently these sorts of powers that they would have rest in the health commissioner's hands?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's my understanding, but I mean, that seems
Yeah.
to be the process that's being fleshed out now in committee, and why it was important to keep this moving forward on the trajectory that it was headed, as opposed to shutting it down. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'm very much biased when it comes to things like science, right? Because I'm not one, and a scientist. I guess I'm part science, I don't know, but I'm not a scientist, and I like to assume that after you've spent that much time in school learning about something, that you're probably better informed making those decisions than me or you or any member of our elected body in the city. And I think it's very important that we allow those people to be making data-driven decisions that are in the best interest of the city as opposed to politicians.
Well, anyway,
I'm glad that this has put increased focus on this board temporarily and on this health plan, which sounds like could be a good health plan. Also, I know a lot of people on this show are interested in anti-racist work, and there's actually an racist training component of this health plan, apparently. At least according to the paper. Very interesting. Bunch of little other stuff, minor stuff going on. The city, people maybe will remember our great show about the South Worcester Industrial Park.
One of my favorites.
We did many years ago, where we walked around South Worcester Industrial Park and talked about it.
Which actually does bring us full circle to medical marijuana, because as it turns out, the company Pharmasphere, that was the company that owned that parcel for a brief moment in time, is now known as Medical Marijuana LLC, and they're one of the largest national distributors of edibles in the medical marijuana industry.
So for like 20 years now, people basically are always like, well, now we're ready to do something with the South Worcester Industrial Park. Nicole Apostolo wrote a beautiful blog post 4 years ago now, just showing like how like article after article for decades had started off with, a new day is dawning at the South Worcester Industrial Park. This is this like abandoned place, which is like kind of off of Southbridge Street.
Yeah.
It's where those New England Coke towers are, those crazy like falling down concrete things.
If you look at it from just the right angle with just the right light, it kind of looks like you're in the midst of like Chernobyl. Just this wasteland with those big towers and whatnot.
It's a beautiful place.
It
well,
is.
Well, people actually have what sounds to me like at least a very different way to go about it. The Economic Development Committee says that if we create an economic development plan, if we go through this process involving that area, then the city will have different options in how it deals with people who might want to use the area. That right now they have to sort of go through a public bidding process, and that this would allow them to sort of have these direct negotiations with people and companies and whatever, and that's the process that happened for Gateway Park, which is a nice downtown office park now. So who knows what happens with this? I don't know if you have any ideas about this, but
I've given up on ideas for it. I'm sure whatever happens is going to happen, and I'm sure we'll end up doing a show there when someone drops a shovel in the ground.
That sounds good. Councilor Bergman would like the Parks Department to plant as many trees, at the same number of trees that private developers, I guess, are required to plant whenever they develop areas. So, I don't know. Mo Bergman has so many interesting zoning-related things going on. We probably should need to get him on the show more often to explain these, because some of them are like very, probably important and very subtle. He also wants to talk about free public Wi-Fi in Worcester.
Welcome to 1999, folks.
I know. Why do we still not have free public Wi-Fi across the whole city?
Google just announced last week, like the next 25 cities that they're going to be rolling out fiber to, in a large scale, and we're still not on that list. But I don't know, Wi-Fi. Don't we already have Wi-Fi downtown and whatnot too? I mean, what are we talking about? Like, are we going to blanket the city in Wi-Fi? It would cost a fortune.
I hope so.
Well, yeah, it would be nice, but it's
I don't know if it would cost a fortune or not.
We've probably already kind of done that on our own, because everybody in the city probably. I don't think there's anywhere you can go in the city where you don't find an open wireless access point, anyways.
See, you say this, but it's, I walk several miles a day. I always have my phone on, stupidly set to like Wi-Fi on, refresh on, and I'll just
happening.
I'll be listening to some song, I'll be walking randomly by somebody's house, and it'll be like, "Bing, your email just got refreshed," because that dude had open Wi-Fi, but it doesn't happen that often.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I guess Mo's onto something then.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. Probably another. We'll see how any of those things go. The big thing actually might be happening right now, which is this meeting about whether we're going to get a dog park, a legitimate dog park, not the illegal dog park in Boynton Park, but a real dog park in Worcester. This is something people have been talking to me about for 10 years, and that's only because I haven't lived in Worcester much longer than 10 years. Right now they're having a meeting of the city. This is the city council subcommittee that's going to make this decision or come up with a plan.
I hope so. I mean, it would be nice for someone to just say, yeah, we should have a park for people to walk dogs in, because it's, like you said, something seems like a lot of people want.
It's literally happening right now, this meeting.
Literally happening as we speak. How much time do you have there?
We got like about 5 minutes.
5 minutes? I have a gift for you.
Okay.
So I just came back from Nicaragua. I was in Nicaragua last week. Came back this weekend. And I thought of you when I found this, right? So, I mean, every hipster worth their salt has a Che Guevara shirt, right? I mean,
sure.
But it's going to be decades before you can buy actual Sandinista propaganda at Hot Topic. So I brought you a Sandino T-shirt from Nicaragua. That's who the Sandinistas are named for. Is Sandino, who kind of led the revolt against the U.S. Marines in the 30s when we occupied Nicaragua, and he's still kind of like the folk legend behind the Sandinistan liberation, the Liberation Front in Nicaragua. And I mean, I don't know if it's the right size. It's a medium.
Sure.
But when you're smuggling socialist propaganda back into the country in your 9-year-old son's backpack, you can't really be choosy when it comes to sizes. So we're in good health, man.
You know, some people complain that this show is too libertarian, but they don't know.
They have no idea. You never know what you're going to get here. Yeah. And also, if we have any Nicaraguan viewers who would love to talk about their country, I had a really great experience down there, and I would love to find some local Nicaraguans who can tell me more about their country, because I feel like there was a lot of stuff that I was missing due to language barriers that I would love to hash out with some locals.
What kind of stuff do people do when they go on a vacation in Nicaragua?
Well, it's funny. So tourism seems relatively young down there. We were in a part of the country that is predominantly catering to surfers and passers through, people who are stopping off traveling through Central and South America on motorcycle or hiking and whatnot, backpacking. We were in an area that predominantly caters to surfers, though, and the most incredible surf I've ever seen. I'm not a surfer. I just was trying it down there. Yeah, and it was kind of like this endless summer sort of thing where you've got like these world-class surfers and their photo crews being, following them around and what have you. Very, very cool stuff. But there's a couple other areas of the country that I wish I had stopped in, predominantly Grenada and then Ometepe, which is like the big national park sort of area and whatnot. Really, really cool country. I mean, it's like any country, right? I mean, it's far too big to have seen in the course of a week, so not really worth trying to flesh it all out. But hopefully we can get back down there and see a little bit more of it.
Welcome back to Worcester.
Thanks, man. It's really cold here.
It's really cold, and our depression
It was not really cold there.
Our rate of depression is high.
Yeah, and I found out once again that, when you get really nice sunburns and tans and whatnot, they can maintain themselves in high humidity, but as soon as you step off the plane in Chicago and it's 5 degrees outside, your skin literally cracks, dries, and starts falling off. So I'm like shedding an entire layer of skin here, and it's very uncomfortable.
I didn't take a tropical vacation this winter, but I should have.
You should have.
Brendan, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
I'm Mike Benedetti. I want to thank you guys for watching the show. If you have any feedback, you can email us at pieandcoffee@gmail.com. If we said anything mean about you, definitely let me know, and we'll apologize on next week's show. Hopefully next week's show, there'll be nothing about the city council, and we will be somewhere other than Brendan's car. But
I think it warms up.
It might be April. We're going to be stuck in this car till April.
We'll see how it goes.
All right.
Anyway, enjoy your life, Worcester. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.